I'm the chairman and CEO of Baidu. It's a real pleasant to be the monitor of this extraordinary panel. In the middle, we have Bill Gates, the co-chairman of Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, former chairman and CEO of Microsoft. He's still the technology advisor of Microsoft, right? And on the left, we have Elon Musk. He is CEO and CTO of SpaceX, and CEO and Chief Technology Architect of Tesla, and Chairman of SpaceX. So let's welcome both Bill and Elon. Roughly 2 weeks ago, when I agreed to be the moderator of this panel, I posted a message on Baidu Tieba soliciting questions from the internet users. I got more than 500 questions for two of you, and I'm going to select one question for each. And on behalf of the users, I'd like to ask. So, let's go on to the question. So for Bill, we have a question from a very ambitious person. He said, as a young man who intends to overtake you as the world's richest man, what kind of vision do I require, and what specific advice would you give me? Bill?
Well, fortunately, I don't think there's any single metric that defines excellence. Hopefully that person has some ideas, or he sees beyond the current generation. My luck was to be born at a time when computing was going from a very centralized, expensive form, where the amount of software that was needed was very, very modest, and so it wasn't even considered the magic element of the system. The hardware, just keeping it running, buying it, babysitting it, was the center of the industry. And yet, because the microprocessor chip was coming along and essentially, from my point of view, making computing free and storage free and eventually even network bandwidth free, I could conceive of a form of software in terms of a tool for the individual that was radically different than any other software. I remember at the time the industry award for the top selling software was if you sold 10,000 copies, you got their big trophy and they gave you a big banquet. Well, our Basic had sold 6 million copies, so I called them up and I said, well, what do you have for 6 million? They were like, what? What kind of software are you talking about? And so it was really utterly different. For this gentleman, hopefully at the end of the age, he'll see how to make robots, or how to make assistants, or some way of making software development far more efficient than it is today. Even though so many things have changed, if you look at, say the code that defines a website, or the code you write for business applications, I have to say, if you'd asked me 40 years ago what that would look like, I would have predicted that it would be much easier to do business applications, much easier to write highly reliable code. So there's an opportunity for somebody, and it's not just in software. If they can invent, a way of making energy cheap and CO2 free, see a twist of using technology to do that. I'd say that would be a kind of a mind-blowing contribution. So the room for innovation, the speed for innovation is better today than ever. In my case, I didn't sit down and say, okay, I'm going to be better than IBM or something. I didn't have the same confidence that this person had. I knew I loved software. I wanted to mess around with it. And it led to, being able to create a company. But I didn't know, at any point in time, part of the reason I think I ran the company well, so I thought, okay, maybe the company will be twice as big. Let me get ready for that. I never said, well, of course, it will be gigantic, because then you might skip all the hard work of scaling up that factor of 2, and I thought, okay, this is it. You know, I just have to build a management system for 5,000 people. If you said to me when I had 10 people and I was writing all the code, hey, you'll have 100,000 people, I would have laughed. I would have said, wow, how many bugs can you create with 100,000 people? I don't want 100,000 people. So, you know, I wish you good luck.
So you're saying you don't really need to be this ambitious in order to be successful, right?
Well, I don't think, we can ask Elon, I don't think any of us assumed that things would line up to create, you know, in his case, multiple successes that are pretty fantastic. I think if you had that, you knew that, you didn't think it was at risk, I'm not sure you would actually get there.
What other characteristics would you look for a potential successful entrepreneur?
Well, you know, people who end up being successful are often, not always, but pretty fanatical about the thing they're trying to do. I remember one industry panel where there were about 7 people, and the debate was, would the computer interface be this character mode thing, or would it be graphics user interface? And at the time, the graphics user interface stuff was so slow, it was laughable. And writing software was so bad, it was Windows 1.0. And so the people on the panel were saying, no, this is kind of a stupid thing. And I was saying, no, believe me, this will be great. And one of the guys on the panel said that hey, Bill is wrong, but Bill works harder than the rest of us, so even though it's the wrong solution, he's likely to succeed. And that was the best compliment I ever had, was that just by working day and night, I could send the industry in some funny direction. So, you know, I was fanatical in that period of time. That is, I didn't believe in vacation, I didn't believe in weekends. You know, so it turned out that worked for me, that we got our company going at a speed that allowed it to make mistakes faster than other people were, and kind of see those mistakes. And many software companies at the time thought of themselves as a single product company. And they were literally designed to be a single product company. And they thought that their sales were mostly going to be in the United States. We, from the beginning, planned to be a multi-product company. You know, BASIC, I don't know if people have ever heard of that, was our BASIC interpreter that ran on a bunch of computers, was our very first product. And of course, today, they're still around, but you know, people use JavaScript for a lot of the things that BASIC was used for that. So we had a conception of a very big company, and we knew what we were about was software. Hiring software people and writing lots and lots of software, not a specific piece of software. So that helped us a lot. We said we're going to have the world's most efficient software factory. Elon has to actually build buildings and buy equipment to make the gigafactory. We said, okay, we're going to have a gigafactory of software, but just with a bunch of guys with better symbolic debuggers and better simulators and compilers and things like that. Now, we didn't get, other companies were also doing that, but we were somewhat ahead in terms of being serious about high quality software development.
All right. Question for Elon, also from our internet users. I'm so curious that I'm going to explode. How does Elon Musk have the energy and enthusiasm to accomplish so many great things? It's incredible. It's just too cool. Does he do things step by step, or does he have huge goals already set for projects that have just hatched?
Sure. Well, I think first of all, I mean, just going back to what Will said, you don't actually expect things to be big. In fact, I mean, at the beginning, I expected that, I thought we would fail. I thought that was the most likely outcome, by far, actually. I thought maybe 10% chance of success for SpaceX, something similar for Tesla. And if you look at the track record of space startups and car startups, it's pretty bad. So it's not from the standpoint of like, wow, if you were to rank order and say, I'm gonna start a company, what's like the highest return on investment for the risk? Like right at the bottom of the list of the least desirable would be something in space and cars. It's a graveyard. So Obviously don't want to be complacent at this point, but we became very close to both Tesla and SpaceX and Solar City all dying at the end of 2008. So
Yeah,
but in terms of how, it's really just that I thought there were these important problems that needed to get solved, and it didn't seem as though anyone was really solving them. With respect to Tesla and Solar City, it's about trying to accelerate the advancement of sustainable energy and get sustainable energy production. For Solar City, sustainable energy consumption in the case of Tesla. When we started Tesla, electric cars were just thought of as the stupidest thing. They're really, in fact, starting a car company was thought of as stupid. Starting an electric car company was stupidity squared. We've narrowly escaped that so many times. So it's not, there wasn't some grand plan. The expectation was there. That was the most likely.
But the follow-up question would be, how can you manage so many things simultaneously? 3 companies.
Well, I don't recommend this. I really, it's not good for quality of life. And I should emphasize that I run SpaceX and Tesla, but I don't run Solar City. I provide kind of strategic guidance. Fortunately, the team there does an amazing job, and it's like 1 day a month, that type of thing. Tesla and SpaceX are kind of like every day.
Oh, you're also in charge of technology products. Are you a very detail-oriented person?
We have a really talented team there, so I just want to emphasize that sometimes in fact, most of the time I get way too much credit or attention for what I do. I'm just like the visible element, but the reason those companies are successful is because we have extremely talented people at all levels that are making it happen. I really don't think it's a good idea.
All right.
I mean, I do it because I feel like I'm responsible for these things, not because it's necessarily the best thing for quality of life.
Okay. Got it. So among the 500 questions, when I went through those questions, one thing I noticed is that for questions to build, most of the questions are Microsoft related. And I understand you spend more time on your foundation than Microsoft these days. Do you really think you are making a bigger contribution to humanity your foundation through your foundation than you did through Microsoft? In other words, let's say 100 years from now, would you rather be remembered as the founder of Microsoft or as a great philanthropist?
Well, I hope I'm alive 100 years from now. That'd be nice. They don't have to remember me as long as I get to do fun work like I am now. The biggest part of the economy is the private sector. And when you think, why are things going to be better 20 years from now, 30 years from now, the vast majority of that's going to come out of private sector companies. The digital revolution is at an early stage. And so companies like Baidu, Google, Apple, Microsoft, they're making a huge contribution. The tools that they create that get used in so many domains, just take education as one domain that over time, we haven't seen it yet, but over time that should make ability to connect up to what somebody's learning and what their goals and aspirations are. So this is incredible stuff. And anybody who had a chance to be part of that, particularly to build a good-sized company, made a huge contribution. What I saw was that the most unique thing I could do, starting in my 50s, was to be full-time at the foundation. That is, that there were other great people who could take the mantle at Microsoft. When I was running Microsoft in my 20s and 30s, I always thought, for sure it should never have a CEO over 45, because who could keep up with all this stuff? So then, as I found myself in my 50s still, the company was like, well, I told myself I shouldn't still be here. And anyway, the foundation work, which is in partnership with my wife Melinda, became more appealing. And I was saying to myself, gosh, who's going to work on malaria? It appeared to be more of a vacuum, that organizing science and government to take these problems that are a little bit hidden away in these poor countries where most people don't actually go and see the depredations of malnutrition and infectious disease. And so it appeared like an opportunity that showed up that could take all the skills of organizing people and energizing people in the software evolution now in a slightly different domain, but the skills of running teams and picking scientists and being patient about things that take 10 or 15 years to have a breakthrough. I could take all of that. And so I think for this phase of my life, this is my biggest contribution and the most fun. It's nice when you decide those two things are the same. But in my 20s, I would not have been satisfied at doing this. And so I think in China, the image is more about the Microsoft, because the foundation isn't that visible. Most work of the foundation is in poor countries. We are trying to build more and more relationships because there's so much innovation in China that can help in Africa, whether it's in health or agriculture or cell phone magic. So that's a growing thing.
So you should come to China more often.
I do.
Yeah, good. Yeah. So you and I had a short debate on artificial intelligence last night, and I want to bring that topic up here too. I also understand, Elon, recently you said that artificial intelligence advances is like summoning the demon. That generated a lot of hot debate. Baidu's chief scientist Andrew Ng recently said during an interview that worrying about the dark side of artificial intelligence is like worrying about overpopulation on Mars. How would you address that? He said it's a distraction to with the scientists in artificial intelligence.
I think that's a sort of radically inaccurate analogy. I know a bit about Mars. So the risks with sort of digital superintelligence, and it's important to appreciate that it wouldn't be just human level; it would be superhuman almost immediately. It would just zip right past humans to be way beyond anything we could really imagine. I think more appropriate analogy would be like if you instead of saying nuclear research, where there's potential for a very dangerous weapon, releasing the energy is easy. Containing that energy safely is very difficult. And so I think the right emphasis for AI research is on AI safety. We should put vastly more effort into AI safety than we should put into advancing AI in the first place, because it may be good or it may be bad, and it could be catastrophically bad. It could be the equivalent of a nuclear meltdown. So you really want to emphasize safety. So I'm not against the advancement of AI. I want to really be clear about this, but I do think we should be extremely careful. And if that means it takes a bit longer to develop AI, then I think that's the right trade-off. We shouldn't be rushing headlong into something that we don't understand.
Bill, I know you share similar views with Elon, but is there any difference between you and him?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I mean, he actually put some money out to help get some work going on this, and I think that is absolutely fantastic. You know, for people in the audience who want to read about this, I highly recommend this Bostrom book called Superintelligence. But the basic point that Elon just made, that we have a general purpose learning algorithm that evolution has endowed us with, and it's running in an extremely slow computer. Very limited memory size, ability to send data to other computers. We have to use this funny mouth thing here.
But it's also
whenever we build a new one that starts over, it doesn't know how to walk.
Really long root process.
So believe me, as soon as this algorithm of taking experience and turning it into knowledge, which is so amazing, and of course we have not done in software. As soon as you do that, it's not clear you'll even know when you're just at the human level. You'll be at this superhuman level almost as soon as that algorithm is implanted in silicon. And actually as time goes by, that silicon piece is even ready to be implanted. The amount of knowledge, as soon as it has that learning algorithm, it just goes out on the internet and reads all the magazines and books and things like that. We have essentially been building the content base for the superintelligence. You think you're using the internet, that's actually what you're doing. So, I try not to get too exercised about this, but when people say it's not a problem, that really, then I can start to get really in a point of disagreement. How can they not see what a huge challenge this is?
We all understand this will have huge impacts in the society in the future, and many companies, including Microsoft and Baidu, we all invest heavily in artificial intelligence. During these days, I'm reading a book by Walter Isaacson, The Innovators. There are lots of detailed stories about how innovations came out. I guess his point is that innovation comes usually from collective efforts from many talented people. But what I also took away is that the U.S. government, especially the military, played a very important role in the advancement of technology. For example, Project Apollo. That generated a very large and steady demand for microchip, which resulted in the flourishing of Silicon Valley companies like Intel. And Internet was a direct output of ARPANET. So the U.S. government played a very important role in this kind of technology advancements. Earlier this month, I was at the CPPCC meeting in China. I made a public speech advocating a project called China Brain. It's basically a artificial intelligence infrastructure put out by the Chinese government. We're hoping to build the largest AI infrastructure so that companies, entrepreneurs, universities can do research based on this platform. For the two of you, do you have any advice on this project?
Well, basically, it's fantastic that China's stepping up to fund more basic research, whether it's in medicine or computer science. That's going to help strengthen its universities. It's going to speed up innovation. President Xi talks a lot about the importance of innovation. So China has a lot to contribute. You have to be careful how you structure the government's relationship to innovation. For example, in Japan, they picked some very specific goals and approaches, the so-called fifth generation project. And it was the wrong way to go. In fact, in the 1980s, the US was feeling like, okay, Japan's better than us, they know how to make things better than us, they know how to plan a government AI project better than us, they know how to do HD television better than us. And actually that was a very good period in the US because people were kind of humbled. And they looked at our sort of scattered system of many universities and no central plan. But in fact, the work in the 1980s was the very best work that was laying the foundation for so many advances, including the PC, the internet. It was being done by a very distributed system that funded a bunch where, put aside the Manhattan Project, because that was special and it actually worked. The way they did their computer science stuff was backing dozens and dozens of different approaches and having contests like the DARPA driving challenge. Now they're having this pretty cool DARPA robot challenge. So I would highly recommend not doing what Japan did and looking at why the US model, decade in and out, has been the best.
Elon?
I very much agree with what Will said. But I mean, it's important to create an environment that fosters innovation, and but you want to let it sort of evolve in a Darwinian way, as opposed to sort of pick it. You don't want to have at a sort of high level, like sort of pick a technology and decide that that's the thing that's going to win, because it may not be, and you know, it's just, you know, it's really, you should really let things evolve. But I mean, but if there's high-level support for innovation and particularly making sure that the penalty for failure is low. You don't want to have failure be too punitive. I mean, well, that's one of the keys to Silicon Valley's success. There are many founders and companies that have been very successful, but in the past the company failed. But they quickly reconstituted, people left and joined other companies, and it's really good at recycling and going through recursive self-improvement. So that's I think a really critical thing. If you're going to say you want to support innovation and new technology, which is, again, you don't know what the path is. There's no map. There's no, by its nature, it's unknown, which means you're going to make false moves. So you must, it must be okay to make false moves.
Did you have a company before PayPal, or was that your first?
I did, yeah, it's a two. That was before PayPal, yeah.
And did you have one before Baidu?
Not really. I had some ideas, but it was not in the form of a company, in the form of a startup. But yeah. Speaking of that, I think you became famous way before Elon and I started our company. So you probably had the chance to know some of the last generation entrepreneurs. Is there anyone that you had contact with and you have respects and you learn things from? Is there anyone like that?
Well, when I started Microsoft, IBM was the dominant company, and they were sort of this behemoth. And then we ended up creating together with them the so-called IBM personal computer that ships in 1981. So it's kind of funny to be working with them. And we learned a lot from them. There are some great people there like Frank Carey. Then we worked a lot with Intel. I learned a lot from Andy Grove. Andy was not always nice to me, but that still allowed me to learn.
Well, you were partners, right? Intel.
Yeah, that partnership was more challenging than it might appear from the outside. But anyway, Andy was a brilliant person. Some of his books about management are very good. Gordon Moore, who did more of the chip-level technology, is an amazing person I worked with, and he's also a great philanthropist now. Steve Jobs was an incredible person, and part of the reason he was so incredible is he was so good at engineering great products, even though he didn't know much about engineering. His ability to pick people and define what the product should be without really understanding the rules of software or chip actually made his talent all the more amazing. And the way he built groups and the way he pulled things together. So there were a ton of great people I learned from. I may have learned more from Warren Buffett, who's completely outside all the crazy computer industry stuff, but his basic views about business and how you work in business actually had more influence on me than any other single person. Also, I'd say having the Japanese for customers, even though I'm saying in the 1980s they weren't structuring things well, their emphasis on quality, and Microsoft had about 40% of its sales coming from Japan for 5 of our early years. Their emphasis on quality really woke us up and changed a lot of how we did things. So that was a huge evolutionary push for us.
So is there any entrepreneur outside of technologies? Like I know Warren Buffett, but he's more like an investor, right? Any entrepreneurs that you have contact and you learn things?
Well, now that I'm in phase of philanthropy, I'm getting to meet a lot of incredible entrepreneurs in a lot of different business areas. But when I was starting Microsoft and people would say to me, you're an entrepreneur, I'd always say, well, what does that mean? I'm a software guy. You know, I didn't wake up and decide, shall I do, I'm a generic entrepreneur, and shall I do barbershops or cookies or, oh. So I was a software person. You know, at age 12, I was writing software. At age 13, I was writing software. There was only one thing that I had a chance of being world class at, which was the thing I was obsessively doing from age 11 to 17. And so it's not like I could have started a company doing anything else in the universe. You know, I'm a software person, and then I had to learn, oh God, you have to hire people. Oh God, you have to fire people. That's a lot of fun. You have to do budgets. You have to sell things. You got to go to conventions and have booths and stand there and, you know, flog your wares. So I wanted to have software for myself that would be empowering for myself. And then I had to learn, okay, there's contracts and many things that go along with that. So in some ways, you know, the drive all came from the dream about software, not some dream about, okay, I'm going to have a company, let's just pick an industry and go get it done.
Well, it's been some years since you were 13. When you look back, when you reflect on your previous life and compare yours with the other successful entrepreneurs, and when you look at the younger generation, do you see any difference between each generation of entrepreneurs? I guess there are probably a lot of commonalities among different generations, but is there a sort of evolution that the next generation entrepreneurs are better or smarter or stronger? Do you see anything like that?
Well, I'm very impressed with Mark Zuckerberg. I've gotten to know him well, and you know, I'm impressed the current generation is actually pretty good about asking us old me, because I'm older than these guys. You know, what mistakes did you make? How should things work? You know, our generation was, in a sense, it was a cleaner sheet of paper. So every conference I would go to would be people our age. There weren't older people, and then, you know, all the analysts or venture capital people who we worked with all kind of grew up. But it was an industry of people in their 20s and then in their 30s. Now, it's much more age diverse. You know, Mark's, what, 32 or something, and he's not anywhere near the youngest guy. He's the youngest guy with a mega success type company. I think maybe this group is a little more mellow. You know, Steve was kind of crazy in a certain way, and I was kind of crazy in a certain way. Maybe it's a little harder to be.
But I guess more mellow a trend? Do you see that?
No, I don't know. It's hard to characterize because there's very diverse personalities. Some of whom I'd like to meet, but you know, don't have a chance to. You know, like the guys at Tencent, I don't know all that well. Jack Ma, I've gotten to know, and you know, people tend to be on their best behavior when they're meeting, you know, other people. Understand what it's like in the engineering meeting where somebody comes in and tells you, oh, this thing isn't working, it's going to be late, or hey, it's just too damn slow. Do we have to rebuild it from scratch? That's where I would love to be in there and see how they deal with the various challenges. Because all these businesses get externally, internally, to the point where they have to rethink some of the assumptions they've made. And you know, at every point Microsoft was more successful, people were saying, well, that's their final success. And it really bugged me because when people were saying, oh, eventually they'll get it wrong, I knew that was true. I mean, the companies I grew up admiring, I wonder if anybody's ever heard of Wayne and Digital Equipment, you know, which are long, long gone. But those were the great companies, and it was probably good for me to see them fail, because it meant that just the wonderful technology and the great people they had in no way protected them from when the marketplace turned left and they didn't notice that was happening, that none of their excellence protected them from missing a market change.
Mm-hmm. I would say there are probably a lot of commonalities among those entrepreneurs. I also read something about you. you were quite rebellious when you were at college. You only choose to audit those classes you didn't register for. And you non-stop working for like 36 hours in class for 10 hours. And when you wake up, you just keep on working. Do you think that's the kind of thing successful entrepreneur need to have?
Well, as I said, I think Steve and I were in our own different ways, not the same ways. I didn't take as much acid as he did. We were kind of crazy, and I don't think that's a necessary part. You know, people debate, you know, could Steve have still been great and been nicer to people? And my answer is yes. You know, he was great. I'm not taking anything away from that. But you know, in my case, I think, okay, there were periods I was very tough on people, partly because I was very tough on myself, and you have to learn how to project that into your management style, which is kind of a natural thing. The harder thing was that I'd been you know, in my school, I was known as the guy who was good at math. And so then I went to Harvard. I was in this class with 80 people, all of whom's personal positioning were they were the best person they'd ever met at math. And so 79 of us were a fraud. Eventually I came in second in the class, and the guy who came in first is a very successful lawyer in New York City. But this idea of never attending classes, that was just to have some unique positioning that you know, I wasn't the same as all those other 80 guys.
I just like computers. I didn't expect to create numbers or anything like that. So it's really, and I think it is better to approach this from the standpoint of saying, rather than like you want to be an entrepreneur or you want to make money, it's like what is some useful thing that you do that you wish existed in the world, and then try to get other people to work with you to create that thing and keep making it better and better. And if you do create something useful, then money will be the result. But that's just the way that the properly working economy kind of rewards the creation of useful goods and services. And if you're creating something that you love and you think other people will love, it's much easier to sort of sacrifice the time and spend the effort. And if it doesn't work out, you don't regret it. It's a good way to go.
Yeah, but have you ever thought of this saying that, okay, I'm younger than Bill Gates, and I don't want to exactly copy him. Is there any difference between?
Definitely. Diverge substantially. There's some similarities, particularly Verge is growing up, and agree with a lot of pretty much everything they've all said here. But my life kind of took me in a different direction. I said most of the first part was on software, and then then I was like, well, it doesn't seem like people are really selling the electric car or the photovoltaics thing or the space thing, and so I thought I'd give it a try. Probably lose money that I put into it, but I thought it was worth giving it a try. That was really the only thing. And then I had to learn how you make hardware. So I didn't even know. I'd never sort of seen a CNC machine or laid up carbon fiber or I didn't know any of these things. But if you read books and talk to experts, you can pick it up pretty quickly. In fact, I think people self-limit their ability to learn. It's really pretty straightforward. Just read books and talk to people. And particularly books. I mean, the data rate reading is much greater than when somebody's like talking. I mean, what's the output rate of speech? It's like a couple hundred bits per second. I mean, maybe a few thousand bits per second if you're really going full tilt. So you can do several times that reading. That's the main reason I didn't go to lectures in college was because the data rate was too slow. So it's like, why are they reading the textbooks? I mean, this is like a bedtime story or something. Ridiculous.
Lawrence, since we are at Boao, this is not a pure technology conference. There are lots of government officials coming here. Yesterday, I think both of you met with President Xi Jinping, and about a week ago, Singapore's founding premier passed away. He's very well respected statesman. President Xi also said he made outstanding contributions to the peace and development of the Asia region. I think Chinese leaders from Deng Xiaoping to Xi Jinping and Mr. Li Guangyao, they share something in common. They believe in this kind of technocratic approach, running a country or government using an engineering type of methodology. This is very different from the U.S. I think U.S. are pretty much ruled by lawyers. What are the pros and cons in your eyes between these two different systems?
Well, I mean, being an engineer, I obviously tend to favor the engineering approach. I think in the U.S. we probably have too many lawyers, there shouldn't be lawyers, but I think we probably have more than we should have. I mean, generally, I think it's good if the political leadership of the country is technically proficient. So I'm sort of pro a sort of technocratic approach. Yeah, I think I wish there were more people in the American Congress that were proficient in science.
You met a lot of Chinese government officials, different generation of leaders. They probably have more to say about this.
Well, I was very lucky that I got to spend have a number of dinners with Lee Kuan Yew. And he was not only just thoughtful, just the very idea that he would take parts of the Western system and say, oh, this part is good, this part may not apply everywhere, this part he disagreed with. It was kind of bold because, of course, the Western system was succeeding. Basically all the rich countries in the world had followed the Western system. And so the idea that he thought he would do it slightly differently was a huge contribution. And Singapore is a city-state, so you can do things in terms of paying government salaries and excellence there that may not scale up, but what he did was very incredible. What we really want is this mix of democracy and expertise, and no country has that balance right. If you err on the side of democracy, there's certain extreme things about the wrong person getting in power, and if you kick them out, then how do you get new people in? So the democracy side, it has some huge advantages that have helped the U.S. Quite a bit. It is a little scary now when we have complex problems like how do you run a healthcare system efficiently? Why is the U.S. paying so much? And there really isn't at this time any elected representative. You can have a good discussion about the dynamics of that system and why it's different than other countries and how we might change that. So government has to do with very complex issues. And the Chinese government, although I'd say the trend is a tiny bit away from it, has had engineers and scientists in a lot of the key positions, and willingness to look at what other countries do, and also this notion that if you're going to have a new policy, you'll often try it out in part of the country, see if it works, and then tune the policy before you try and scale it up in a very broad way. So the Chinese government is a student of policy more than just a say UK Parliament or US Congress, where people are kind of yelling at each other about, I'm right, no, you're right. It's not like, oh, let's go do an experiment. I've never sat in the US Congress and say, oh, let's try yours out, and one state will try it out, mine, and we'll come together and combine the best features. That's not a typical electoral dialogue that we're having right now. So it's a work in progress. There are things like how you run universities where the US model, other people should just adopt it. Then there's things like health systems and governance where they maybe should take some aspects but try out variations so that we get the benefit of 192 countries of slightly different experience, including at the subnational level.
We have a very strong government. They have very strong execution capabilities when it comes to infrastructure, high-speed rail or highways. We have massive constructions, and now it's probably the largest infrastructure in terms of transportation in the world. But when you have a strong government, are you concerned about innovation? There might be things that's too strict that's going to hurt innovation.
Well, I think Chinese innovation is going at a very high speed. I think that the government could raise how much it spends on science research even more than it is. It's raising those things. There have been areas like in the media where you have to say why the Chinese market, although this is starting to change, has been behind in terms of media companies and things. I think a little bit the state probably deserves, as a little bit of the reason the media sector hasn't come further along. But in terms of things like how do you make energy, the state policies are not holding back somebody, figuring out some big invention. In fact, I have a company, a nuclear power company called TerraPower, that really China's the most natural partner for us with the breakthrough generation of nuclear, because China's a lot like the United States was in the 1960s, where the idea that you want to go forward and do new things, it's very clear. The idea that the status quo isn't where you want to be. The U.S. today is very careful that, hey, we're pretty happy with the current conditions. So if somebody wants to build a new building or take some new approach, there's a lot of maybe no. There's like 5 levels that you go through. Maybe no, maybe no. And so it's, whereas the bias towards moving and doing new things, which has a small downside but a huge upside as well, I'd say in terms of breakthroughs in some areas like nuclear, it's more likely to come out of China than almost any other place because of this bias towards doing big projects. And in the 1950s, 1960s, that was the US. In the 70s, it started to be Japan. Korea took on that role, and that big engineering bias is great for the world.
So Elon, you are very futuristic. Let's say 50 years from now, how would you envision a conference like Boao be done? Do you think we still have to come to the stage and meet face to face, or is there a better way for people to communicate as a conference?
The airport will be closer.
I think people will still want to do conferences if only for sentimental value. It just feels better to be in proximity to people. I mean, even if you have really perfect virtual reality, that you put on your headgear and your haptic suits and everything, and kind of be there, it really feels like you're there. It's still not the same as actually being there. I think people, it's sort of a natural human thing to want to congregate and be around people.
Speaking of transportation, there are lots of buzz about the self-driving cars. How long do you think it's going to take for self-driving cars to become mainstream in US, in China, and other parts of the world?
Sure. Well, let me preface this by just saying that with something where there's an enormous industrial base like cars, anything that happens en masse is going to take time. So there's about 2 billion cars and trucks on the road. Global capacity is production capacity is about 100 million cars and trucks a year. So let's say tomorrow we had self-driving cars that work perfectly. It would still take a long time to switch up the massive industrial base. It would take 20 years if there were the same number of cars and trucks. There are probably some smaller number of cars and trucks and things were autonomous, but it's still will still take a while. So I think, but to answer the question, say where do I think the first production self-driving car will exist that people can buy? It's probably, well, in terms of the technology working, I think we're not more than 5 years away from having cars that are way safer than humans.
Yeah, but for mainstream adoption, there needs to be laws and government support.
Sure. That's why I said from a technology standpoint.
Right.
So, from the point at which you have the technology working, then you have to convince the regulators that it's truly safe. So you'd be effectively running a large fleet of cars in shadow mode, where there's still human driving, and you evaluate what the narrow AI on the car was doing compared to the human action, and then you'd be able to statistically prove that the narrow AI on the car would have been safer than the person. And it's going to take at least 2 or 3 years. So from the point at which it actually works, I would expect that there'd be some delay in regulatory approval of at least 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, my point out to that is that it won't be monolithic. That is, companies like Microsoft keep coming in all the time saying, we're going to do the most advanced city in the world. Well, now it's clear, if you want to design a city that assumes that drones are allowed to deliver things and come up with ways of sort of onboard client-side collision avoidance, and you want to assume you need no parking garages because these self-driving cars are around, we should have a few dozen jurisdictions in the world that decide to get out there in front, get the benefits and the challenges of that, just so we get hundreds of millions of hours of this software seeing the ball come into the street and all that thing. Some pioneers there's some downside with it. But so that's why it's good we don't have one government. Even in China, they should pick some places and have super liberal rules. So I think we're a few years away from having, say, a dozen jurisdictions say, let's just go for it and design this in. And then in a decade, we'll see the benefits as well as a few of the problems.
So besides the government, is there any other factors or type of people who need to be prepared about this, driverless cars? What kind of preparation for people like us need to have?
Well, the benefits are mainly when you design a city from scratch, assuming that you get this thing.
We don't have that kind of luxury in most cases.
That's right.
In mega cities, and how can we smoothly transition to that kind of society?
You can have a regulatory environment where things like Uber are allowed to come in. Uber is a form of a driverless car. It's just using sort of on-demand human labor to efficiently provide that service. And so you think about Uber for everything, the way we use capital equipment, and it's pretty exciting that the very market mechanism of when resources should be used in a different way was very inefficient until we had this digital template. And now we're seeing that the matching of I want to use an asset, I have an asset, has been amped up. That matching function is way less friction now than ever before. So it's changing a whole ton of things about capital goods and labor usage.
So, Elon, do you see Uber as a partner or competitor? Or what's going to happen when nobody needs to drive the car?
I think that, neither a partner or a competitor. I mean, we're just making cars. So, like, Uber can buy the cars, other people can buy the cars, and they'll gradually get more autonomous. But again, I do want to emphasize that the point I made about the industrial-based switchover means that this is not going to be an overnight transition. It's literally impossible for an overnight transition. Because 2 billion cars and trucks, 100 million new cars made maximum capacity per year. So we should be panicked. What are we going to do? All these people, like people who lose their jobs the moment a self-driving car arrives. It's like that's possible. There's self-driving cars. They work for a while. But I mean, things will be autonomous. Who knows what will happen in that environment? People may prosper or they may not.
Yeah. Well, 1 hour is a very short time, but I think we covered a lot. We talked about history, we talked about future, and I think a lot of times history can tell us what the future will look like, and I sincerely hope that our generation can learn from the history and make contributions to the next few generations so that they can benefit from our effort. And with that, I thank you all both for coming to this session. Thank you. I'm the chairman and CEO of Baidu. It's a real pleasant to be the monitor of this extraordinary panel. In the middle, we have Bill Gates, the co-chairman of Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, former chairman and CEO of Microsoft. He's still the technology advisor of Microsoft, right? And on the left, we have Elon Musk. He is CEO and CTO of SpaceX, and CEO and Chief Technology Architect of Tesla, and Chairman of so let's welcome both Bill and Elon. So roughly 2 weeks ago, when I agreed to be the moderator of this panel, I posted a message on Baidu Tieba soliciting questions from the internet users. I got more than 500 questions for 2 of you, and I'm going to select one question for each. And on behalf of the users, I'd like to ask. So, let me go on to the question. So for Bill, we have a question from a very ambitious person. He said, as a young man who intends to overtake you as the world's richest man, what kind of vision do I require, and what specific advice would you give me? Bill?
Well, fortunately, I don't think there's any single metric that defines excellence. Hopefully that person has some ideas where he sees beyond the current generation. My luck was to be born at a time when computing was going from a very centralized, expensive form, where the amount of software that was needed was very, very modest, and so it wasn't even considered the magic element of the system. The hardware, just keeping it running, buying it, babysitting it, was the center of the industry. And yet, because the microprocessor chip was coming along and essentially, from my point of view, making computing free and storage free and eventually even network bandwidth free, I could conceive of a form of software in terms of a tool for the individual that was radically different than any other software. I remember at the time the industry award for the top selling software was if you sold 10,000 copies, you got their big trophy, and they gave you a big banquet. Well, our Basic had sold 6 million copies, so I called them up and I said, well, what do you have for 6 million? They were like, what? What kind of software are you talking about? And so it was really utterly different. For this gentleman, hopefully at a young age, he'll see how to make robots, or how to make assistants, or some way of making software development far more efficient than it is today. Even though so many things have changed, if you look at say the code that defines a website, or the code you write for business applications. I have to say, if you'd asked me 40 years ago what that would look like, I would have predicted that it would be much easier to do business applications, much easier to write highly reliable code. So there's an opportunity for somebody, and it's not just in software. If they can invent, a way of making energy cheap and CO2 free, see a twist of using technology to do that. I'd say that would be a kind of a mind-blowing contribution. So the room for innovation, the speed for innovation is better today than ever. In my case, I didn't sit down and say, okay, I'm going to be better than IBM or something. I didn't have the same confidence that this person had. I knew I loved software. I wanted to mess around with it. And it led to, being able to create a company. But I didn't know, at any point in time, part of the reason I think I ran the company well is I thought, okay, maybe the company will be twice as big. Let me get ready for that. I never said, well, of course, it will be gigantic, because then you might skip all the hard work of scaling up that factor of 2. And I thought, okay, this is it. I just have to build a management system for 5,000 people. If you said to me when I had 10 people and I tried all the code, hey, you'll have 100,000 people, I would have laughed. I would have said, wow, how many bugs can you create with 100,000 people? I don't want 100,000 people. I wish you good luck.
So you're saying you don't really need to be this ambitious in order to be successful, right?
Well, I don't think, we can ask Elon, I don't think any of us assumed that things would line up to create, in his case, multiple successes that are pretty fantastic. I think if you had that, you knew that, you didn't think it was at risk, I'm not sure you would actually get there.
What other characteristics would you look for a potential successful entrepreneur?
Well, people who end up being successful are often, not always, but pretty fanatical about the thing they're trying to do. I remember one industry panel where there were about 7 people, and the debate was, would the computer interface be this character mode thing, or would it be graphics user interface? And at the time, the graphics user interface stuff was so slow, it was laughable. And writing software was so bad. It was Windows 1.0. And so the people on the panel were saying, no, this is kind of a stupid thing. And I was saying, no, believe me, this will be great. And one of the guys on the panel said that hey, Bill is wrong, but Bill works harder than the rest of us, so even though it's the wrong solution, he's likely to succeed. And that was the best compliment I ever had, was that just by working day and night, I could